But thank you to Sam and the Loudoun County Public Library for inviting me. This is super exciting, and I'm excited to talk with you tonight. So let's go forward. All right, so if you all don't mind, so I know who I'm chatting with. If everybody wouldn't mind sharing their name, age and grade, if you're comfortable sharing where you go to school, and maybe a little bit about something that you're working on right now, or if you're not working on something, maybe what you like to write.
I'll go first. My name is Ronnie. I'm 13 and I'm in 8th grade.
Hi, Ronnie.
I go to Farmville Station Middle School.
Excellent.
When you say what are you working on, I think you're talking about writing, but I'm
Yes.
currently trying to finish my mixed media sketchbook. It isn't really writing, but that is something I'm working on.
Absolutely. That's definitely you being creative. So that's awesome.
My name is Rena. I'm
Hi.
2 years old. I'm in 8th grade, and I go to Farmville Station Middle School. And
Awesome.
the writing thing I'm working on currently is vocab set 2.
Ooh, very cool. All
I'll
right.
end class. I feel like
Excellent. Lots of creativity. All right. Who wants to be next? I'll pick on you. How about Anil? Can you hear me? Nope, Anil's muted. Okay. Josh, do you want to go on mic? I saw a chat.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. My name's Adianj, and I'm just working towards getting better at writing.
Awesome. That's great. Is there something that you really like to write or you would like to write?
I guess creative stories or yeah.
Okay. So you'd like to write fiction.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. And how old are you?
I am 14.
14. Excellent. All right. Thank you. Who else? Josh, Chloe, Cascades. You've got Sue. I'm just picking on names here that I see. Okay. All right. That's fine, Josh. Okay. So did I see that you were a junior? And what, Josh, what do you like to write? Or what are you working on? Excellent. Fantasy. Okay. That's great. Anybody else? We have a pretty shy group. Okay. Listening intently at Cascades. Okay. All right. Well, if anybody else wants to jump in on mic, that's fine. And please feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind if you've got something to say or you've got something that you would like to contribute as we go along. If you have a question, please feel free. I see that like a chat will pop up, so I'll do my best to keep up with it, but I think Sam's going to help out with that. Okay, is this only for school kids or adults as well? So the program tonight is aimed at teens, but the information that I'm sharing certainly is appropriate for adults as well. So, anybody, fine with anybody hanging out. All right, so if somebody else wants to introduce themselves on the chat, that's totally fine. And if not, I'm just going to assume that you're interested in writing or that you think you might be. So. All right, so this is me. This is my professional bio. So this is what appears in the back of my books. So I write fiction for kids and teens when I'm not writing college recommendation letters in my day job as a school counselor. I love the little moments in life that help someone discover who they're meant to become, whether it's my students or my characters. And I think that's really sort of the crux of writing, especially coming of age, stories where you're trying to figure out, who someone's going to be. So, and then the fun part, I'm a voracious reader. I love to travel and hope to one day be bi-coastal, the east coast of the US and the east coast of Scotland, though I am not sure that that's going to happen anytime soon. And then I live just outside DC with my husband and my daughter. And then these are when when you're an author, you sometimes might need to have a professional headshot. So here are some of mine. And then what do I write? I know this slide looks a little bit different, so I have 3 published young adult novels. They are all inspired by fairy tales. The first one, It Started With Goodbye, came out in 2019. It's based on Cinderella. And then I followed that up with Everywhere You Want to Be, which came out in 2019. And both of those were part of the Young Adult Virginia competition, which happens in Richmond every year. So that was very exciting. And then 2019, I came out with No Place Like Here, which is based on Hansel and Gretel. And most of these are set actually right here in Northern Virginia. So if you haven't read them yet, I'd be super stoked if you wanted to. So I'm just pausing for a second. I'm getting requests to annotate the shared content. I'm going to decline those, just because honestly, I don't really know what it means. But I guess if you have a question, or you want to write something or communicate something, just throw it in the chat or go on mic. I think that would be the easiest. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Sam. Okay, so that's me. So that's what I write. I currently am actually working on some middle grades, so going a little bit younger. So we'll see. And if you're interested in how sort of the publishing process works, I'm going to be talking about that next month. So stay tuned for that. All right, so I'm going to start off by giving you my best advice. So number one, always is read a lot, read everything, read in the genre that you're interested in, read outside, practice writing, right? That's why you guys are here. You want to get better at writing, but a lot of it is the rest of this stuff. Observe the world around you, even if you're publishing fantasy, or you are looking at sci-fi, or you're doing historical. It's super important to observe the world around you because you need it, characters to be realistic, thoughts and emotions, actions, that type of thing. So you need to make sure that you are, just start stealing things from people around you. It's a lot of, I heard an author say one time, you never wanted to sit next to her on a plane because she would take everything that you that you told her on your flight and stick it in a book. So we're going to talk a little bit later about sharing your work with other aspiring authors. We are better when we work with other people. And then just like you're doing right now, go to author events and listen to authors talk about their work, because then you can pull from their stuff. And then honestly, finish the thing. When I was in high school, I started the same book over and over and over. I probably got 3 pages in. Great story, knew how the whole thing went, never ever finished it. I didn't finish anything until about 10 years ago. So I think there's a lot of power in writing the words at the end, because once you do it, you know that you can do it again. So there's my best advice, but I'm going to give you some more practical stuff as we go along. I'm looking at the chat and I see that Chloe had a question. How did I publish my book? Is it self-published or an agent? I have an agent. I'm actually on my 2nd agent, which is a common thing. But yes, my agent sold my books to an imprint of HarperCollins. So you can find them in the library, you can find them in Barnes and Noble, you can get them on Amazon. But yeah, traditional published. Okay, I'm gonna move forward. All right, so I'm curious, you can put this in the chat, or you can go on mic. I'm curious, sort of, do you have any writing goals for yourself, or like right now, this month, within your lifetime? And what are you kind of hoping to get out of this workshop? Because this is going to be a series, and if there's something that I haven't put in tonight, then I am happy to stick it in the next session, which will be on the 18th. So does anybody want to offer some opinions. Do you have any goals? Feel free to turn your mic on or turn your video on, throw it in the chat.
Okay, I'll answer both questions,
Sure.
but my writing goal is, well, it's mainly my lifetime, but to at least write a book and maybe a good poem.
Absolutely. Those are good goals.
Yeah, also like I like drawing as well, so maybe I could even write my own story, and instead of hiring an illustrator, I do the
Do it yourself.
illustrations myself.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, and what am I hoping to get out of this workshop? Maybe some more advice that
Mhm.
you can't really just find on the web. Like,
Okay.
you can just search up writing advice and get
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yep, absolutely. That's great.
Okay, I'll go now.
Okay.
My goal is to finish vocab set 3 before Wednesday and to get an A on
Excellent.
it.
That's a
Um,
great goal.
And the second question is that I'll be able to do some creative writing that will actually be kind of difficult.
You can totally do it. You can totally do it. I think starting something is scary. But once you're in it, and then just like I said before, if you can finish something, you have done something magical, which means you can do it again. So I see Sue in the chat is interested in writing short stories and hopes to publish a book of your short stories. Excellent. Okay. And so what I'm going to talk about, most of what I am presenting about can be applied both to a novel length work or also to a short story. Short stories sometimes have a little bit of different roles, but definitely maybe a little bit more flexibility. But okay, well, Sue, I keep submitting. I will tell you, it took me 100 queries to get my first agent and 2 books and more than 100 queries to get my second one. So there's always a good time. It will happen. All right, let's see. Josh, you said you have a lot of ideas, struggle to find motivation. Yeah, I get that. And I think that we're all sort of in this state of exhaustion right now, which definitely makes creating content of any kind more difficult. So yeah, definitely I'm right there with you. But we don't stop because we love it, right? So okay. All right. So think about some barriers. What gets in your way? Because Josh, you talked about motivation, right? But my guess is that there's probably something else happening that gets in your way of filling the time that you have. Um, so things like time, we don't have enough time because we have other commitments, right? For those of you who are in school, your parents probably ask you to do things. Maybe your schoolwork gets in the way, siblings, chores, sports and activities. Are there other things that that prevent you from working on something that interests you? Yes. Josh, do you want to is it something you want to share? Parents, yeah. No, I get it. Absolutely. And I think sometimes, and I'll talk a little bit about how we can sort of maximize the times that we have. All right, ladies, you have your hands up.
For me, it's mostly school, but
Hmm.
also hanging out with our friends and going to events are also kind of preventing me.
So you have to choose. You have to choose between like being social or doing the things that you have to do and doing the writing, which, like is a thing you can't just do casually. You have to sit down and do it. Yeah.
Okay, for me, I say most parts when I finally do have free time, I want to read webtoons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Understand. All right. Yeah. So just I think recognizing those barriers and those things that get in your way are really important to try and get started and get going, because if you can find time, carve some time out, um, then those are you can maximize that time that you do have. Okay, so this is a screenshot. Can I give you this link? Didn't mean to do that. I'm gonna copy and paste and put this into the chat. So this is actually something that I use in my day job. A link to this thing from Virginia Tech's Counseling Center, where you can see how much time you actually have during your day. I wouldn't suggest doing it now, but it's a really interesting tool so you can see how much time you have to actually do something in your free time. So this is just a screenshot of what the top of the survey looks like, but um, it's super interesting to find out, in some cases that you have way more time than you think you do. And it so it's just a good exercise if you feel like you don't have time to do something, and you can it's actually just very eye-opening. All right. So some other things that you can do. So if you know that you have um a finite amount of time, like, so tomorrow you get home from school or home from work and you've got an hour before your parents get home, or you've got an hour before you really need to start your homework. Something that I use a lot is this Pomodoro technique, which is kind of funny because Pomodoro refers to a tomato, but it's a very simple method. So you work for 25 minutes, set yourself a timer, kitchen timer, set it on your phone, and then take a break for 5 minutes. If you can do focused work for 25 minutes, you can actually do a lot of writing in that time. I do that every day, actually in the morning before I go to work, and that hands down is the most productive 30 minutes of my day. I think if you really make an effort, like, there is time in your day. Um, so okay, make time is a great tool. Share the link. I'm not sure what the question is there, but I've just shared the link to the thing I was talking about. So, Josh, do I write every day? No, but when I'm working on something in a draft, I try to. But I'll talk a little bit about like other things you can do as part of the process that you can do every day if you don't want to write every day. And I just want to pause for a second and also say there is no right way to write. Like, some people will tell you you have to write every day. Some people will tell you absolutely not. Some people will tell you you have to write an outline, and some people will say absolutely not. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. But part of this process is figuring out what's right for you. So I'm sharing some things, but they are not all the things. And they are not the right things, but they are some things that might be right for you, if that makes sense. This little picture at the top is a picture from an app called Forest. I think it does cost $1 or $2 in the App Store, but it's pretty interesting in that you set it on your phone and you say, okay, I'm going to set it for 30 minutes, and your phone starts growing this beautiful little tree. And if you pick up your phone, it will die. So there's sort of like this emotional commitment. To keeping the tree alive. And I believe at one point they were even, if you grew a whole tree in your half an hour or whatever amount of time, they were also donating a tree, planting a tree somewhere in the world. I'm not sure if that's still true, but that's one. I think you can use it on your phone, and you can also use it on a laptop. And then the last thing down here is the quote that says, Parkinson's first law, work expands to fill the time available. I love this quote because I think that if you give yourself 3 hours to write, or 30 minutes to write, you likely will get the same amount done in that time. But if you give yourself 3 hours, then you're probably messing around on the internet, or playing Wikipedia, or talking to your friends, or something else. So I think the idea of focused writing is really a good way to maximize the amount of time that you have. If you want to spend time with your friends, or your parents have expectations for you, it really, you can stick it in a little tiny piece of your day, and you can get it done in that time. So, all right, any questions about those things? Right. Okay, I want to do a quick plug for National Novel Writing Month, which is the most productive month of my year. If you're not sure, it's going on right now, and the goal from November 1st to November 30th is to write 50,000 words in that month. And so it's about 1,700 words a day. There are word trackers on it. This is a screenshot of my nano project from yesterday. And you can kind of, if you can see it, you can see I like to update every 200 words or so because that makes me feel good about my progress. All their social media channels will do fun things like pep talks and sprinting. And then if you don't want to do 50,000 words, you can join the NaNoWriMo Young Writers program. And you can set your own word count, and it's something that teachers can do in a classroom as well. So all right. Chloe has a question. What if you might be insecure about your book? Like it's not good enough, no one wants to read it. My friend, this happens every day, no matter how many books you have published, none published, bestsellers. Everybody has this imposter syndrome all the time. And I think you just have to believe in your own work, which I think takes some time. But if you like it, odds are that somebody else is going to like it too. So you have to write what you love, and then the whole thing, whether anybody ever likes it or sees it, or it ends up on the New York Times bestseller list, if you love it, that's the most important, which I know is such an adult thing to say. But I think that's what keeps me going because, like publishing is not easy and you really have to believe in yourself. All right. Okay, so how do you prepare? A term from National Novel Writing Month that has sort of bled over into other things is, do you like to outline your books first, or your short stories, or your projects, or do you just fly by the seat of your pants? Or are you a plotter or a pantser? Anybody have any idea what they are? Do you like to outline? Do you like to have it all planned out? Okay, so Sue's a plotter. Excellent. I'm a plotter as well. Okay, broad outline. Yep. Okay. So here's a quote from author Rachel Aaron, which really struck me. And so she says, if you want to write faster, the first step is to know what you're writing before you write it. And that doesn't mean that you are writing a very detailed outline. It doesn't mean that you have to know everything. Um, but it also, but it can, if you know where you're going, whether it's written down or not. Like I spend a lot of time marinating on my ideas before I actually write them down. A lot of times that can save you some trouble, save you from cutting, save you from rewriting. I just rewrote, actually, for the first time ever. I've been doing this 10 years now. I just rewrote an entire draft from scratch all summer, and it was horrible. I hated it. But it's better now. Okay, read them around your pantsers. Excellent. So yeah, like I said, there's no right or wrong. I would just say something to think about is marinate. Think about your ideas. Get your ideas at least in your head before you um, keep going. So let's see. All right. So Josh says, not really a plotter. Sometimes it is helpful. I agree. I didn't used to be a pantser, a plotter, and now I have to outline everything. It's all right. Danielle, fly by the seat of my pants. Never really got it right. Trying to get a better idea before starting. Yeah, I think, doing a lot of thinking before you put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard or whatever. I mean, even if it's like quick sketches when you're writing, when you're, just thinking about things. The notes app in my phone is full of stuff. Sometimes I even have to pull over when I'm driving to write stuff down to make sure I don't forget it. So, okay. All right. So Chloe wants to know how you stay motivated. I wish I had something magical to say for that. I think you just have to keep going. And I know now I'm going to sound like a broken record, but once you finish it, you'll feel like a completely different person. It really does sort of change your perception of yourself and the ability to do it. And once it's done, that means you can make it beautiful and shiny and revise it. So I hope that is helpful. Okay, so setting the mood. Everybody sort of does their own thing when it turns. Okay, I see a hand. I'm gonna say it wrong. Aka. Do you want to go on mic? Oops. All right. No worries. Um, did you have a question or do you want me to, ready for me to move on? Okay, super. All right, so setting the mood, right? You probably have things that you need to get started. Do you like to write to music, or do you absolutely have to have silence? Do you have a desk? Do you write on your bed? Do you write on the sofa? Um, Hold on, ladies. Do you like to write in at home or elsewhere? I sometimes really like to go write at the library because it's quiet and other people are potentially watching me, which means I am being accountable. And so I'm not messing around on the internet and I'm not paying for coffee and I'm not feeling like I need to eat something while I'm there. Um, do you, if you don't like to write to music, or maybe do you have a playlist for every book? Do you have a playlist for your characters? I know a lot of people that like to write to movie scores that have a similar feel to their book, um, which is helpful. Have you made a mood board, something on Pinterest or a collection on, on somewhere else? Let's see. I like to have music on when I write. Yes, I always have to have music on when I write as well, Josh. That's the same. I know people who just like, nope, no music at all. And then the other thing I think sort of that could potentially help set the mood is this idea of an id list, which I'm stealing from author Jennifer Barnes. Absolute silence for Sue. Excellent. So Jennifer Barnes has a suggestion when you're getting started with an idea, making sure, so the id is the part of the brain that like our pleasure center. Sometimes you can think of it as a little kid who's a kid in a candy store grabbing all the things that they love. So making sure that you put these elements of joy into your story. So that could be, if you really love stories set in boarding schools, then making sure that your story is set in a boarding school. If you really love dragons, making sure that there are dragons. If you are super clumsy and you want to make sure that your hero is graceful, things like that. So making sure that you you love beach towns, put your book in a beach town. That's an id list. And so I know a lot of people who call these like candy bar lists or love lists, but it's before you even get started on the idea, you think of these things that you love that bring you joy, that will you put them in the book and will make it more joyful to write as well. All of this stuff is prep. All of this stuff, which might seem like accessories, um, this is you preparing to write and putting your brain in the right mood um, to get started. So all of that, this is actually important. Um, so, okay. All right. Daniel likes music, Undertale music. I will confess, I don't know what that is, so I would never judge you anyway. But I think if you're not listening to something that you like, yeah, it's not going to be as joyful. It's not going to be as good as experience. So, all right, ladies, you have your hand up. Go for it.
There you go.
Okay, so I'll go first again. I'll answer the first two. I prefer working with music because if it's silent, I'll get distracted.
Me too.
Um, it's more helpful for me to work at a desk, but as long as the chair is comfortable. And then I usually have to kind of work at home, but I would rather prefer working in, yeah, like a library or a cafe. And something that also had helped me, like you mentioned, being around other people to help to stay more accountable. I would, and it would help me more if I wrote with a friend.
Okay. Yeah.
That person took my idea. Now, okay, my turn. Music or silence both works well with me. I think I prefer music. I'll do it on a desk with a chair. I would like to work at home or library or like a coffee shop would be nice. I the playlist I'll use is my playlist. I never had a mood board before,
I'm
or
going to show you one here in a second.
and also my original idea is that I would like writing with my friend, like we're writing at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I like that too.
So,
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to give you two examples of two mood boards that I made. So the one on the left with all the quotes is from my most recent book, New Place Like Here, where the main character is based on Little Red Riding Hood. Not little, I'm sorry, mixing them up. Hansel and Gretel. And instead of breadcrumbs in the woods, she leaves quotes all over the place, like writes them on door frames and throws them on pieces of paper and throws them into the fire. And it's also set in a like an outdoor retreat center. So these are some quotes that I thought, let's see. Yeah, these are all in the book. And then I liked this outdoor woodsy forest setting. Um, so that really sort of put me in the right mood to write that story. And then the other side is a mood board for everywhere you want to be, which this is Little Red Riding Hood. So we've got Little Red Riding Hood up at the top. It's set in New York. She's a dancer. She has a crush on a drummer, so you see the dibs on the drummer shirt. And then she stress bakes. So there's a shirt about baking. So I think sometimes these feel like, I don't know, maybe feel like a waste of your time, but it really puts you in the mood to write the story. And the more your brain thinks about it, the more ideas you're going to be generating. And it can also help you with like details, you know, like the deeper you are in with your character, the better it's going to be, the more well-rounded a story. So if you're not into it, no big deal. But I know a lot of people, they help. So. All right, so writing tools. So these aren't really questions, but these are just sort of things to ponder. Um, some people feel very strongly about typing or writing by hand. Um, I prefer typing, but writing by hand, I think, is a fun exercise if you are just sort of trying to jot things down, or you are like even like character sketches or playing with voice. Sometimes I like to do that by hand. There's a lot of software, none of it is right or wrong, but some really popular ones, these are just names. Scrivener, Dabble. I use Dabble, but I have used Scrivener in the past. Storyist, Noveler, Wordsmith, Ulysses. They're all just someone trying to make money on something that's a little bit different. Um, I like Scrivener and Dabble though, because you write by scenes and you can organize. So you've got a column on the side of your page and you write a scene and you name it, and then you write another scene and you name it, and you can move them around. And so if you feel like you need to reorder scenes or reorder chapters, it's really easy to do it in there. So I usually will draft in Scrivener or Dabble, and then I will move it into Word for revision. Another tool that you can use is a word count tracker. I showed you the one on the NaNoWriMo website, but there are plenty that you can find on the internet. I don't know names of any because I tend to use the Nano one, but I think sometimes word count tracker can help you if you are a competitive person, if you are motivated by just sort of seeing that number go up and sort of like the idea of winning. So okay, so Sue's asked, what's the use of the software? It's just a lot of times they're just easier to keep your stuff organized. So so for me, sometimes when I'm drafting, I generally write by scene instead of chapter, and so I can move things around, and I could like visually you can see when they move around. You can also within the same document, you can put any research that you have done. You can put character sketches. You can put if you're writing something that involves sort of world building and you need like a story Bible or something, you can put all of that stuff in the same document. So you're not constantly going back and forth between different Word documents of all of those things. So it's almost like having, 100 different Word documents together. And so once you can convert it to Word eventually. But I just find for drafting, um, drafting those software platforms are pretty easy to work with. It just makes things, I feel like I'm more organized. So let's see. Okay, so Chloe's got a question. I've heard people say if you publish your book by an agent, you won't get a lot of say on how the book is made. You don't have full control over your book. How do I feel about that? Well, I would say I never felt like I didn't have control over my book. I worked with 2 different editors and 2 different copy editors, and they all started every conversation that we ever had with, "This is your baby. We will not do anything you're not happy about." There was only one decision where I pushed back. So uh, for the most part, yeah. Like the only thing you actually don't have a lot of control over is stuff that has nothing to do with the book, like your cover and um, and the marketing that you get. So it's the actual story. The author does have quite a bit of control over that. Is an agent the same as a copy editor? No. So the agent is the person that you hire to sell your book to a publisher. And then the copy editor works for the publisher and helps you with things like word choice and making sure that things are consistent throughout the story. Okay, so as we're writing, another important thing to remember to have is that you have some method to save your work. So Dropbox, Google Drive, Flash Drive, something like that. And then another tool that I mentioned sort of fun here because it's cold outside is a wrist guard or warmer, because if you're doing a lot of typing, then your wrists might need a little love. Okay, Chloe has asked, does that mean you can't decide what cover you get for book? Yeah, that's right. You can have input, but I know a lot of people that hate their covers. I love mine, so I feel very lucky. But there's a lot, yeah, you do not have a lot of control over that. Actually, I'm going to talk about this a lot in December. I'm going to talk about sort of publishing 101. So Chloe, it sounds like that might be a session for you. I think December 7th, is that right, Sam?
I'm actually just going to double check that so I don't give the wrong date, but I'll
early December. All right. So, how do you start? This is a question I get a lot. So how do you start? So I'm sort of thinking about this sort of from things that I have heard, things that I do a lot of critiquing of people's beginnings of books and short stories. And so best advice, dive right into the action. Um, if anybody's familiar with the author Judy Blume, I heard her say one time that you have to begin the story on the day that something is different. I feel like that is a really good way to think about it. Because if you dive right in, conversation or something is happening, um, and it's the day that something is different, then your story is off and running right away. Something that people who are practicing or just starting writing often will load up the beginning of the story with something we call info dumping. So those of you who are currently taking an English class at school will have heard the term show, don't tell lots of times in your life. Yes, I see some head. Are we thumbs up here, thumbs downing this? It's a good advice. Um, but I think that's really important because you have to trust your reader. And so if you've got information that you need to share with the reader about a setting or the problem or backstory, memories, things like that, just making sure that you layer it in. Don't give us a whole page of explaining and somebody did this and this and this and this. So that's maybe later tonight, pick up your favorite book. Look at the first like 2, 3, 4 pages and see how the author does that. You know, did they dive right into the action? Did they hook you from the first couple of sentences? So I just grabbed a couple of books off my shelf that I thought had really good couple of first sentences. So maybe this might be a good exercise for you all to do later as you're just for fun. So I'm going to show you the first line from The Darkest Hour. I don't know if you can see me. But The Darkest Hour by Caroline Richmond. And I just thought this was this is a historical fiction. So my good Catholic mother taught me to never lie, cheat, or steal. I pray she can forgive me then for what I have agreed to do, for this sin will be far worse. Right? Like you're right in that right now. Like immediately that this person had a good Catholic mother, which probably means that they had a conservative upbringing with expectations. We know that they were taught a particular way to behave. and that they don't do that anymore. And so that's kind of exciting. Let's see. So yeah, so Sam's got in the chat there, December 7th, I'm gonna do a publishing 101 workshop. So I'm gonna do one more this beginning. Okay, so this is The Girl with the Red Balloon by Catherine Locke. And the first sentence, I'm just gonna do the first sentence. My first day in Berlin was what my Saba would have called a balloon day. So like right away, I'm like, what is a balloon day? And Saba, and so that is not maybe a word that I am always familiar with. And so I am immediately hooked and wondering what the next thing is going to be. So there's something to think about. Maybe go back and look at your favorite book and see how it began. Because part of reading is studying, making sure that you're studying how your favorite authors did what they do. Okay, characters. I'm going to go into this a lot deeper in the next session, but a couple of things that I would say about characters, and this is a good thing to sketch out in advance, even if you're not doing like a big outline. Making sure that your characters have both strengths and weaknesses. They've always got to have flaws. Make them realistic. The voice of your character should match the age and stage. So I can't tell you how many times I've critiqued something that is meant to be, you know, a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old, and they sound like they're 50. Like you've got to make sure that you're matching the way that the character should be speaking or thinking to sort of where they are in their life. Making sure that you're paying attention to all 5 senses. Someone said to me, and now I see it all the time, that not enough authors will tell you how things smell in books. And it can be a really powerful thing to know what your character notices about what's around them. So, you know, do they hear dogs barking as they're walking through the neighborhood? Do they smell the freshly cut grass? You know, like don't just say what they see. And then something else just to consider is secondary characters. What purpose do they serve for the main character? In my second book, Everywhere You Want to Be, it's about dancers. And I had a whole group of people that my main character was taking classes with. And they were not distinct enough when I first started writing, and my editor said, you know what, let's just get rid of this one because there's no purpose. And so making sure that everybody who appears in the book is helping move it forward. All right, so those of you writing fantasy or sci-fi, historical world building is important. I'm just going to touch on this just very briefly because this is, I have at this point only written contemporary with like some elements of historical, so I am not going to pretend that I know how to build a whole fantastical world, and props to those who can, because I think that it's a really difficult skill, and that is a level of organization that my brain cannot go to. But if that is what you're doing, that's awesome. But these are just some things to consider. I will put this in there. I'm going to try and put the link in chat here. Josh loves the world building. Excellent. You're writing the right thing, my friend. But I just thought this was, I really liked this chart. I thought it was nice visual and something that if I were world building, I would probably have next to me all the time to remind myself. Okay, Daniel says secondary characters to make a 5-man band. Perfect. If that fits your story, I think that's excellent.
Oh, I have a question.
Go for it.
What is a contemporary?
Contemporary. So that means that it's happening in our current world, in our current year or time period. I'd probably put even something that was like 5 or 10 years in the past as contemporary. But does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But even if you're writing something that is set in like a realistic fiction set right now, you still have to think about things like, where are we? You have to think about the culture of what, you know, the people that are in your book, or the country that you're setting your story in, you know, so you still have to think about these things because your readers will know if you don't get it right, especially with contemporary because it's real. All right, so story structure. I'm going to share this one as well. This is a really great blog post about story structure. And there are a whole bunch of different kinds, but I just pulled from general because I think that everybody seems to have a preference for one or the other. So story structure, so status quo, the protagonist is living some sort of normal life, first part of the story, but not always. So this I think of as like the backstory, right? Like you know who they are before they started, and then the inciting incident, sometimes called the catalyst, it forces them out of their comfort zone. Sometimes this is the first page. You need to have the thing happen right off the bat. And then, so something is going to happen to force them to take action somehow. You're going to see rising action where things get more and more tense. They're pursuing their goal. There are bumps along the way. And then you're going to have an all is lost moment. My first agent called this the dark moment. And I always recognize when I've gotten there in the book. And it usually means things are going to get more exciting. So that's when your main character believes they have failed. And that dark moment almost always happens about 75% in, so 3/4 of the way through your story. And then there's some type of resolution. It might be a happy ending, it might not, but there's usually some type of growth for your main character. If you will see this in almost every book that you're reading, as long as there's some type of plot happening. I will say there are some books where you cannot find the plot. I'm reading one right now and I'm a third of the way through and I still have no idea what the problem is. So let's see. Can there be more than one dark moment? Yeah, absolutely. There's usually a really, really big one, but depending on the type of story, like I would say particularly fantasy or even historical and sci-fi will often have little dark moments along the way. If you click on that link, the last link that I put up there about story structure, you'll actually see some different story structures that include multiple dark moments. But there usually is like one really, really bad one closer to the end where then things will go back, will start, you know, changing around, or the hero realizes, oh, I got to get it together. So, okay. Cool. More questions about story structure. Anything? Well, we can talk more about this in the next session as well. I also just want to be conscious of time. It's 6:53 and we're going to end at 7. But I did want to say though that we're going to do another session on the 18th. I'm going to continue anything I didn't get done today, which there's quite a bit here. And then we'll do Publishing 101 in December. So I hope you'll come back. All right, let's see, one more. Okay, this is a really good place to end. I'll make this the last slide because this is something that I am terrible at. 10 years and I still really struggle with this. So stakes. I just find this like whole concept of this really hard. But once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. You know, you can't unring that bell. So I'm going to put this blog post in the chat. But basically, stakes are what your problem they're trying to solve. And if you don't make it bad enough, then your reader's not going to care. So, Chloe, I'm going to answer your question when I'm done with this slide. Okay, so these are just some things to think about. So what happens if your protagonist fails to achieve their goal? What are they risking? What might they lose? If it is, you know, they don't get to, I don't know, I can't even think about something. So like you have to think about what is bad enough that the reader is going to care. If the answer is nothing or nothing very important, then your stakes are too low. So another question you can ask yourself is how personally invested is your protagonist in the outcome? Like how much does that goal matter to them? And if the answer is not very much, your stakes are not high enough. you should also be asking yourself about external consequences. So like how are their actions going to affect other people in their lives, the world at large? Sometimes I just call this the external stakes to begin with. So like what's going to happen? Like, is the world going to blow up? Are they going to destroy their whole family? Are they going to make their whole school disappointed? I don't know, like not everything has to be that big, but there usually is some type of external consequence. And if the answer is nothing, then your stakes are not high enough. And then the last question I would think about is, are you telling the story of the defining moment of your protagonist's life, the biggest, most life-changing, important thing that's ever happened? And the answer is no, your stakes are not high enough and you might be telling the wrong story. Okay, well, I don't know that it's always the defining moment, but I think that if you think about something that is significant and something that is going to put your character on a path, one way or the other, or that's going to help them make a decision or get to the next point, then yeah, then your stakes are probably high enough. You have to make it in so your reader is invested. If that, and I know that this is a really like big thing. And when you get it right, it's amazing. But this is something that a lot of writers I know struggle with, because quiet stories, nobody really cares. Which I would love to write very quiet stories, but those don't sell. So okay, so Chloe, any tips on how to make the reader feel what the main character feels in the book, like when something really bad? Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So I think it's super important, and something really bad or sad happens, or also if something really happy or frustrating or something really anxiety producing happens, when you show us the emotional reaction. So let's say a character's dog dies. Okay. So don't tell us, Billy was really sad. You can say, Billy had tears streaming down his face. His hands started sweating. He buried his face in his pillow. He cried himself to sleep. He hugged his mom. Like all of those actions communicate to the reader that he's really sad without actually using the word sad. I hope that makes sense. So an emotional reaction, that's a good exercise. Like um, if you think about the thing that is really sad or bad, try and get it across to the reader through actions, not through Billy was really sad, if that makes sense. Okay, and so Sue has asked, in a short story, stakes do not necessarily play a very important role. I think it depends on the short story. I think it depends on what the purpose is. I've seen a lot that are more like a scene or a character sketch, and I think that that's fine. A lot of times it depends on like maybe what is the theme of the collection of short stories. It's really trendy right now in young adults to have short story anthologies where there's like a theme in general. So there are a couple that are like Edgar Allan Poe retellings, or there's one that's a Shakespeare retelling. There are ones that are themes of Jewish characters, queer characters, and they've only just got that one little thing in common. And so the story, as long as you're going with a theme, I think it doesn't have to be like the world is going to blow up. But it does tend to follow the same sort of story arc. Maybe just not as big, I guess. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Can you point towards improving show don't tell? Yeah, I think it's practice, honestly. I would do that exercise that I just said. I think um, look at things like actions that, like you want to communicate sadness. Practice. Write down all the ways that you could show that someone is sad through actions. You want to show that someone is really excited about something. Like, what is happening in their body? Is their heart racing? Are their hands sweating? Are their cheeks flushed? Are they fidgeting? You can think about those actions that communicate that. It does take some practice, but once you do it, it gets easier. All right, I think we are at 7 o'clock. Y'all have been excellent. Ooh, okay. I'm gonna do this one last question because Chloe just asked my favorite thing. How do you name your characters? So I think this depends on what you're writing. But if it is contemporary or something that will use contemporary names, this is what I do. I go to the Social Security website and I look at baby names. And so the people who hand out Social Security cards keep track of baby names every year. So if you Google SSA names, you will find this. Put in the year that your character should be born, look at the top 1,000 names for that year, and pick whichever ones that you like. Last names, I try and vary ethnicity and country of origin, and I just Google like top 1,000 surnames in the US, or if they're coming from a particular country, then I'll Google last names. Wikipedia actually is a good source for last names, particularly if you're choosing from different countries. So all right, I think we're out of time for tonight. But yes, so we're going to be back here on the 18th. I'm going to just pick up where I left off. So we're going to talk about a whole bunch more stuff, and then we will continue with Publishing 101 on
December 7th.
December 7th. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. I don't know why my camera's not coming on. Let's try and maybe because I was sharing. All right. There we go. Okay. But you all have been excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. It was really great to talk with you. And I'm really excited to hear about the things that you guys are writing about. And yeah, lots of luck, and hopefully I'll see you on the 18th.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good night.
You too.
You, everyone.
Good luck, Chloe. You got this.